with Harold. And Harold, you served in what branch of the military in World War II?
I started in the Army, and then I got transferred into the Air Force. Now the Air Force has changed its name about 3 times from when I got in. The Air Force was part of the Army at first. Then they became the Air Force, I think. Then it came as the United States Air Force.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about. Let's talk a little bit then about. Before we get into your career, let's talk a little bit about where you were raised. Okay, talk to me, and let me just ask you, where were you raised? What can you tell us about?
As a little boy, I was raised in New Britain, Connecticut, and in the north end on the New Britain, Connecticut. Not many Swedes were there, and I enjoyed it. And like I said, I had this bus place next to me, and I used to hang around there and search the buses for nickels, pennies, and whatever, you know. But that's where I was raised.
How did you come to entering the armed services?
I had to. I was drafted.
What year?
1943, I think.
Tell me about the situation behind your getting drafted. How did you find out about it, and kind of what was your reaction?
Okay. It didn't bother me because we were all a family separated because of my father passing away and everything. And we had to work, the boys, to make money for the home. Anyway, as far as the drafting, everybody was being drafted. Now, I had a friend of mine, George Zanobi. He died. But he was going into the service a week, I think a week or 2 before me. And I wanted to go with him. So we had a girl in our house where we lived, all of us. Peggy Heath. They were a well-known family in New Britain. And she was on the draft board. And I called Peggy. I said, Peg, I want to go in the service with this George. And sure enough, she got me to go with him. We got on a train in New Britain, and we took a train to Fort Devens, and we went from there to Florida. And here I was happy because I was with George, but in the service, they go alphabetically when they line you up, right? I'm an O, he was a Z, so he was always at the end of the line. So anyway, we used to go out with girls. I went out with his cousin, he went out with another girl. We used to all go out together. So anyway, when we marched, if you don't mind me telling you this, we got on a train up there and we went down to Florida. When we went to Florida, this is the Army for you. We went with the winter clothes from New Britain to Florida. We got down there, it was hot like hell. But anyway, we had duffel bags that we had to carry out. Christ, it was nothing to me. I weighed 112. Anyway, I went and got out of line. I went in the back with George. So the two of us carrying the bag. And we're talking about the girls and everything. You know, we get down there. I put my bag down, look all around. No George. So an ambulance pulls up. And he gets out. I said, George, what are you doing? He's like, passed out. So all that time we're talking, I was talking to him. And he was in the ambulance, the son of a gun. But we had some fun anyway. So we went down to Florida. At Garrigan, they separated us. I was with a bunch from New Britain, and he was. But I guess because of the alphabet, he was in a different group.
Now, how old were you when you were drafted? Do you remember?
I was 17 or 18 years old.
How did it come? Tell us you never went to high school. Is that right?
Never. I started, and then all that war stuff came, and because of my father, I went to work. I peddled milk. My other brother peddled milk. At that time, we used to deliver milk on the side of the truck, if you remember, when you were young, and bring it into the houses, a quart, 2 quarts, whatever. That's what we used to do. My oldest brother used to work he worked in a dairy, and he used to take all the cream and everything and take care of it. So the three of us all were very busy working there. We worked for the Hesslins.
Where were you in the chain of ages amongst your brothers?
I was the youngest.
You were the youngest. Did the older brothers at all enter the military?
Yes. My brother Howard, the one who worked in the dairy, the oldest one, he worked for New Britain Machine. He was a great tool grinder, and we all did tool grinding. And he had to stay because of the war. After the war, they took him in, and he had to go, and he went to Germany. So he was there. I already came back, and he was over there. Harry was in the Navy, and Harry stayed until he got out, and I forget when, but Harry got out in the Navy later on. And of course, I was in the Air Force.
We should mention, for those that don't know, that people who were in critical industries like your tool grinding brother were the ones that were stayed at home to continue those occupations.
Well, Howard had to do that.
Howard.
Yeah, I worked. In fact, they were supposed to give me my job back when I came back. And it was Landers was where I worked as a stock boy. I was, 15 or 16. I was a stock boy there. And so they had to give me, well, anyway, I was a tool grinder just like my brother Howard. We all ground tools so that they could use them on the machines. And I guess they just didn't like the guys coming from the service and saying, we got to give you the job back. You know what I mean? So they just put me on a surface grinder, and I'd fall asleep there, you know, because they boom, 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 back and forth. So I get up and walk around, and they paid no attention. And I said, this isn't for me, you know? I used to walk up to Landers that had a big entranceway. Remind me of a jail. So I got out of there. And then I started in the flower business, growing business.
We'll talk about that. Let me interrupt if I could. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to get back to your service career. I'm curious what you remember of Fort Devens, what that experience was like, the training.
No training in Fort Devens, other than them telling you how to get in line and stand. You know, with us, we didn't know. But no, we weren't there long. We weren't there long.
Where'd you go?
We went from there to Florida.
Okay. And
by train.
And tell us about your experience in Florida in the training. What was that like?
Florida, we were stationed in Miami Beach in a hotel. And most of these guys that were in this were from New Britain. We knew a lot of them. But we did our training there, and what they used to do is we used to call us out in the street, line us up, you know, all the plain stuff, you know. And we used to go and practice our marching on a golf course. Now, from the hotel to the golf course, you had to march in the streets. No traffic down there, you know. Very few people that lived there. They were like cleaners and stuff like that. But anyway, on the way there, we used to sing. And everybody would be singing the songs, you know. And they'd be singing like mad. We get at the golf course, and then we practice our marching. We come back, same thing. We ate back at the hotel. We used to go, they had a restaurant that we went to.
Sounds like you guys were kind of interested in girls when you were talking to your buddy. Was that what'd you guys talk about when you were down? Because obviously
we talked about things at home, reminiscing and things, your girlfriends, and we used to reminisce all that stuff. Nowhere you could go. You couldn't go anywhere around Miami Beach. In fact, George got stationed closer to the beach, and I was back in the hotel on the next street, You know what I mean? But you know, they were very, very, very strict on our movements. We never could move around. I got a picture of me down there, and I gotta find it. I don't know where all my stuff is, but we did. That's all we did.
Anything
Every day you come out, you're gonna go march to the golf course, march around, and they used to tell you, you know, all the things you had to do. What the hell? I never marched in my life, you know. And all these guys that were there, same thing. They didn't know nothing. You know, one night I can remember they had someone in the hotel, and I forget what it was, but they did something outside of what they were supposed to. Well, all night long, nobody would tell who it was. All night long, they'd call us every 50 minutes out. We had to stand for about 5 minutes, go back in every 50 minutes, that whole day, that whole night. That's what we had to do. And I guess that was part of the discipline of the service, you know what I mean?
But did anybody rat them out?
I don't think so, because nothing happened that I knew of. Of course, when you're going to service, you go in early like that. There's not much you know about what's going on, okay? You know, they tell you when to eat, they tell you when to go to the toilet, they tell you where to go to the toilet, they tell you, you know, all this stuff. So right away, it's almost like worse than being married.
How'd you end up in Army Air?
How did I end up there?
Yeah, in Air.
Like I said, I think in Miami Beach we did test. They test us, all the guys, and they pick you out for what they think you're qualified for. Now because of that machinist work and stuff that I did in the factory, I think that's why they picked me out for the Air Force. Because it certainly wasn't my education, because I didn't have that much.
Where'd you go from Florida?
From Florida, I went to North Carolina, I think. And we stayed there just about a day or two. And then well, in fact, my wife I got married, and my wife came down. We stayed at a doctor's house, you know, there in one room. Then we left there. I had to leave because I had to get back to the camp so I could travel with the gang. And we went from there to up to north, not Detroit, but up north in one of those places up there. And my wife, then she came there, and she worked in a little place just so we couldn't see each other there either. So my outfit got filled up, all what do you call it? So I got into it a little late. And they moved out, they flew, they had a crew of the ships that they were assigned to, okay? So I had to go back, I had to go over on a ship.
Over to where?
I went over to England, Liverpool.
What year?
Oh, I would say it was probably still in 43, because all these moves were fast and you didn't stay long anywhere, you know.
What did you do when you got to Liverpool?
For Liverpool, I got there at midnight, and we marched through the streets. You know, everything is strange to you. And then they shipped us by train, I think, if my memory is good, down south. We were in southern England. And while we were stationed down there to go to school, and I was stationed at a field where Robin Hood was very common in that area, and it was a little city, a little town that actually the airfield was, but I could always remember Robin Hood, you know, part of our life there, you know. And we went to school there, and then where the heck did I go from there? Well, I got assigned to a troop carrier outfit, and I was in the Well, I was in 439th and 93rd Squadron. And then, well, I was the crew chief to the plane. I was his assistant because that was all filled up because I came late. And it was good. We also had to do guard duty at night and guard the planes. And we work during the day, get a couple hours sleep, and then you come out on the line and you work on the airplanes. With the Air Force, they had a headquarters attached to it. Headquarters would do all the big work, the parachutes, the engines, anything that was big, they took care of. We took care of the smaller stuff in our areas, you know. And eventually my outfit, these guys, they got enough points at that time. The war is still on though, and they got points, and they left. So then I took over the crew chief job, and they started eliminating, if there are things you don't want to hear, just tell me. They started eliminating the, what you used to pull. Help me out.
Well, let me ask you this. Tell me a little bit about the plane again. What kind of plane were you working on, and what was its purpose?
It was a C-47, a DC-3. They call them DC-3, C-47. I guess the names were the size of them. In a C-47, they had a big double ball, a doorway, so that you could get bigger items in and stuff. Where the other one was more for a passenger type thing. And we had to do a lot of the oil changes, check all the tires, and pull the props through sometime, you know, so that the oil, you know, would get around. And all that kind of duty we did.
This was large. This was a transport.
Oh yeah, it was a pretty good sized.
What were they doing? I mean, what were they transporting into Europe, I presume?
Okay, what they transported was a lot of things. I can remember picking up the nurses. Then we'd go get the wounded. And the nurses would fly with us and take care of the patients. We also would fly, well, we used to fly a lot to go to England and go places like that and pick up the maps or the paperwork that they needed. And
where were you stationed then? You weren't stationed in England at that time?
Well, England, we were stationed, then we moved to France.
Okay.
Because we had to be closer to the front than bombers or anything like that. Because the bombers would come up and fly high and go in. We fly low. We used to fly so low, the farmers used to throw rocks at us because we used to chase their cattle, you know. But it was a great experience.
Tell me about some of your experiences.
I enjoyed it. Well, we used to fly in for the guys, the Army, to take their time off. Okay, we'd take and pick them up where they were stationed. In France, Germany, or wherever, not Germany, but France. And we used to pick them up and drive them to the beaches. Down France would be down on, what do you call it, the Riviera. We'd drop them off there and we'd have to fly back. But what we used to do is there was the pilot and the crew chief, are the only one who could ground the airplane. So, you know, but they used to let us do it. They knew what we were doing. We wanted to stay overnight, you know. Then the next day we take off. But that was one of the things we flew down, was that. Then I got a good one at the end I want to tell you, but we used to fly, well, another one was gasoline in jerry cans. We used to fly water. We used to fly food to all these different camps. that we used to bring them to. They were near the airfields, you know. We used to sometimes fly paratroopers so they could jump, you know. And I could remember, and it was a thing I tried to put research on, and I could never find it. And the Battle of the Bulge, and you said you knew about it a little bit. They had a lot of snow, and your father told you this. And the Germans were putting a big push on, but they got stuck in the snow too. So what they did, we flew into France somewhere and picked up the dogs to pull sleds, okay? And they brought the field we were on. You know, you don't remember these places because you don't get the names, you know what I mean? But anyway, these dogs, they brought them to our airplane by pulling those big trucks because they had no way to control the whole team. They get them in, and we didn't do it. The guys that were familiar with the dogs, they brought them inside the airplane. They laid down, and they threw up and everything just like human beings. And we flew them into the Battle of the Bulge and dropped them by parachute. And I never heard anything about it or what, because I don't think it went over that big, because it was getting closer to us making a good part there, you know. But anyway, they dropped them by parachute.
We're talking about dropping the dogs.
Yeah, dogs.
By parachute.
And the only thing I did was when we drop them, then I have to pull those static lines in, so we could get the doors. And anyway, they well, that was another thing with the paratroopers I got to tell you about. Paratroopers didn't like us. But these dogs landed on the ground, and the guys on the ground were trained for them dogs. Where they went or what they got, I'll never know. We used to take the paratroopers up. They disliked us because we got blamed if they landed in a tree, if they landed in a pond or something. They blamed us. So we couldn't go near that door. They'd throw us out, you know, because so we stayed away from there. They had to do all the work of pulling everything in. Then when they pulled it in, it was all right. But in England, I had a friend of mine. I got a picture of him somewhere too. Eddie Rennock. He was a paratrooper. We always wanted to see each other over there. And he was stationed in Huntington, England. And we were stationed at an airfield on a hill right outside Huntington. I heard that he was down in the camp, down below. Paratroopers, you never go near them. Don't. So I went down, and I went up to the lieutenant or whoever was in charge. I told him how this Eddie Rennock was my buddy back home and this and that. He let me go in, and I went to see my buddy. My buddy and we went to a bar, and I never was a big drinker. But, you know, England has very short bars, you know, not big ones. And at that time, there was about 5 people deep. Well, Eddie was a big guy. He'd reach over and get all the drinks. I can remember him. Then he had to go back to camp to take me back to my airfield. And he did. He carried me because I was polluted, and he carried me on his back. I can remember throwing up on his clothes and everything. Well, we were given bicycles, the crew, not the pilots. Pilots and co-pilots were brought out to the airplane by Jeep. But we had the bikes so we could travel out because the airfields were big. By the time you walk there, you never get there. So we used to ride, they were transportation, the bikes. So he came out of our place, he took the one bike, he went down the hill, and he went to the place. He went down, the street went down this way, then that way. Instead of him going this way, that way, he went straight down. I saw him later. He finally died, Eddie Rennock. And he was he was good for that type of work, because to take a chance, he took a chance.
Speaking of the type of work, you saw, you transported wounded, I presume. You were a young kid, 17, 18
Yeah, right.
years old. What was it like? I mean, what was war, being right up there near the front, flying in those conditions? What was that like, being that young and having never experienced anything?
Well, I'm not a swimmer. And of course, I was young at that time. And I was never scared of anything. I rode in the airplanes all the time, and never scared of that airplane going down or anything. And I never got scared. And I never was trained around any of that kind of stuff. And it just didn't bother me.
Do you wonder why that is?
I think it's just a little excitement of your own that you had, you know what I mean? That didn't bother you. And the pilot and the co-pilots, of course, we were all friends. And my airplane, we didn't have a radio operator. They were only spaced in every so many airplanes, because we used to fly 3 in a what do you call it? So, there'd be 3 of us. And we'd be hundreds of airplanes, hundreds. And we'd be flying. We never had any, I never got scared. I was more scared of like landing down at the beach and all by myself, you know what I mean? Than I was, because I never was away from home.
Speaking of home, what was it like? How did you stay in touch with home? What was that?
Letters. Of course, when I went over there, I was married, and I used to send letters. My wife, she passed away now, and that's something I got to tell you about that group. But anyway, she and her and I went to school together, and she used to write to me a lot. I wasn't a great writer, but I used to write letters back, Now, when we used to cart the gasoline, the Patton, if you ever saw Patton's movie, he wanted to go into Berlin, and the politicians stopped him. Okay? Well, they got mad. In Italy, he did it because they wanted Montgomery to go in down there. And he went ahead of them, and they got mad at him. When he went up there, they wanted the Russians to go in. And he didn't want them to go in. He wanted to go in. And he kept telling he had one superior ahead of him. And he kept telling him, he says, get me the gas, and I'll take Berlin. He said, I'm telling you. And they wouldn't let him. But we used to bring the gas in those jerry cans, fly them up to him, and leave them at certain areas. And then they pick him up. They said he traveled 100 miles a day. Imagine that, to get in there. And of course, he got awful upset, when they took everything away from him. But anyway, and I got a picture, I'm going to show you that picture. We had to take those French prisoners that Hitler had them and bring them back to France on our way back, okay? They had to be deloused. They sprayed all around here and here on your arms. And they did it to us too, because we were transporting them in the airplane. So we were sprayed. And I never thought nothing of it. It was DDT. In fact, I'm still fighting it because they'll never admit it to service. Okay? And I had, when I came back, I had one daughter, 4 months old, had a hole in her back. The fluid kept feeding the head. She lived 4 months. She passed away. I had my Judy, who lived a little longer, and she was a preemie, and she had all kinds of sickness. She passed away later in life. Now, I had a boy that had a 3-chamber heart. The 2 lower chambers had a hole between them, and that one chamber went to the lung, and it was Then the other one went down to the body. It was too much pressure for the lung. He passed away. But anyway, he gave me a granddaughter, and I got her picture, I'll show you. She's beautiful. And I see her all the time. But he passed away. Now my wife, the first wife, she had a brain tumor that killed her. She died. I had prostrate, what do you call it? And had it taken out. Then it started growing back. And now, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been going to this other doctor, and when he seen it growing so fast, then he started another treatment, and that's what I'm on. In fact, I was just there the other day and got a needle, that they give you the, what do you call it, the women's stuff, what do you call it?
Estrogen? Is it a hormone or?
Hormone.
Would have been estrogen.
That's what I got the other day. My can is sore from that freaking needle. But they gave me the first needle, that he gave me a strong one, and I really got sick from it, So I went back and I told him, and he changed that, and he went into this new one that you get in the can, which is pretty good. So now I went back. My PSA is 0. So it's doing good. And
the problems, the really tragic deaths of the children, your problem now, do you think then that the DDT had something to do with these?
I do, because they tell me that DDT it stays in that area, and it never leaves. It's a very strong thing. In fact, we got an article that was just in the paper, and my wife, if she was here, she'd show it to you. She's got it, and it says that DDT is, of course, they know it's still around. That hasn't left yet. And they know that it's a very strong disease, spray. And of course the government don't want to admit it, but they like, even some of the doctors, when I first talked to them, friends of mine, oh, it's genes. And then I started thinking afterward, genes. My father had cancer at a young age. Only one in the family. My grandmothers and them lived to 90-something. You know what I mean? No one had nothing but him, and it could have been from his drinking or something. You know what I mean? But anyway, that there cancer stuff was out as far as I'm concerned. Is that DDT is what caused this here. And a hole in the body, like in a spare tire, right? A hole, you know what I mean? It wasn't a cancer type thing, and all of them, the whole family.
So, given that how do you put this all then in the context when you look back upon your service years? I mean, how do you put the experience that you've had, the tragedies on the health side, the experiences you had in the war, how do you kind of look back on it now? When you reflect on it and think about it, what are your feelings, your emotions?
My feeling towards the service is, I think the Air Force is the best in the world, educational-wise, because I went to school under them and got my education. If that boy that passed away, that had the heart, of course, with that condition, he couldn't get in the service. He would have been in the Air Force by my influence because of their schooling. And I, still today, I don't blame them for that. I think the Army and them did a lot of things wrong, but the Air Force was more educational. The guys, even the officers and everything, they weren't, they would talk to you and you know, be friendly. You know what I mean? Where the Army wasn't like that. The Army, they wanted to be the boss, you know, and that was it. But the Air Force, no. And I was the happiest guy in the world to become part of the Air Force. And I just love everything I did. My training, everything. I loved it. I love it right now, at my age. But it's hard to be away from your family, you know, because I never was away from them. But yet the service was good to me. It treated me good.
I want to ask you, because I'd like to capture we talked about some of the interesting stories that you've had, but you were telling me a little bit earlier about the chow, commonly referred to as SOS.
Yeah, right.
Why don't you talk?
I'll say it out loud.
Go ahead, say it out loud.
Because I say it to my family. None of them will have it.
What's that?
Shit on a shingle. And that there is one of the guys. My tent on the airfield used to be right on the corner, and the eating place was down to the right, you know. So everybody used to go down there. And then some of these big guys like you go down there, they give them one piece of toast with the shit in the shingle. Christ sake, they could eat 5 of them. But me, I was small, I didn't eat many. But then I had my buddy, I had a buddy of mine, he from Chicago, and we were very close. But he was with the headquarters. Now headquarters, if I get off the subjects, you could tell me to stop. He was with the foods, okay? Then another kid was from Waterbury. He was the head of the parachutes. Then there was another guy, he was from down here in Massachusetts, and he went out to California, opened a gas station, and he was charged of the transportation. So I got to be friendly with this Bob, you know, and when he'd come down and he had to turn down that corner to go down to the place to eat, he used to leave me a gallon can of fruit because I'd be on the line. I wouldn't be there. He'd leave the fruit underneath. At night, we used to take the bicycles. This little Jewish boy used to come with me, a friend of mine, Bernie Robin. He was from North Carolina. And we used to ride over, because it was on the other side of the field. And you're talking about maybe 2-3 miles to go on the other side. We'd go over there, and they'd get the weapons carrier out, and this Joe Forcier, he could talk French. He'd take us to town and talk to all French. So we'd get everything, eggs, we'd get everything we want, you know. It was really great. That gang, they did wonders for us. And, you know, it's more or less like a job, you know, just working for them. But like I said, the food, our outfits, for some reason, used to be able to go and fly to these warehouses, and they'd have radios in them stored, you know, because what the Siemens, I guess, was a big radio. And now that they used to go to the beer places and bring kegs of beer back, and they put them up on the bench so the guys could drink them there. And as far as the other stuff, they used to bring everybody. I had a radio, a beautiful radio that I got because of our airplanes, and I had to trade it for I traded it for a little gun, and I really wanted the radio. I brought the gun back, and I think I gave it to someone here. But the outfits like we had like that, they were tremendous. Oh, this might be interesting. You may not like it, but anyway, they had, for a shit house, they had a big tent. Okay, now they had all the stuff, you know, all around where you sit and did crap, right? I'd be crapping here, you'd be over there looking at me, I'd be looking at you, you know, and that was something new to me. I never had that type of thing, you know what I mean? But here was this big tent, almost as big as this room. But here you'd be looking at every guy there. You'd be looking around, you know, who's grunting, who's going. But
you brought. I know you mentioned earlier bringing some stuff back from the war, and I think every GI always brings something back that
Yes.
you remember. You showed me something, and I want to just give it to you right now if I could. It was the glassware.
yes.
Right, and can I just bring this over here and have you talk a little bit about
Yeah,
it?
which one is it now?
Well, I'm going to bring you this glass.
That didn't come during the war.
Okay, which is what did
That
you,
was the Jewish guy after the war.
Yeah.
Gave that to me.
Let's talk about that just a minute.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Jewish
Okay.
guy after the war.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you a piece of it
That
because
there-
I think you're very
that-
proud
That
of
that
this item here.
Yeah, you're lucky I let you carry it. You
I'm
know.
going to do that. Yeah, well, you were nice enough to let me carry it over to you. Why don't you tell us, first of all, what, I'm going to back it off here a little bit and move our camera around a little bit so people can get an idea. Why don't you tell me a little bit, what is that glassware anyways? What is that, Harold?
Well, this is a glass that's made in Germany, and it's glassware. And this type of glassware, even in the United States, was very, very expensive. And when he showed this to me, and the stars and things in it, I fell in love with it as a florist, you know, and as a director. And it's so beautiful that I took it and I kept it all my life.
Tell me about the gentleman from whom you received that.
Okay, the fella that I got this from was a Jewish man. And should I tell you all about Hitler?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, I think it's an interesting
He,
story. He had an interesting...
he had a factory over there to make pottery.
This
And
was when now? This is...
what was that?
What years was this?
Oh, well, for him to tell me the story
Yeah,
was after the war,
right.
because I had the flower shop.
Yeah.
That was in the 50s.
Yeah,
But it was during the war
right.
that Hitler took him because he was a Jew, and he had the factory, and they gave him $200, and they gave him, what was it, 2 months or 2 something to get out of Germany. And he did. He came, I thought that he said he came to the United States, but he could have came to maybe Canada or somewhere, but he ended up in the United States selling property, yeah,
And what
okay.
happened to his factory after he sold it?
Never knew. I don't know. He never went back, I don't think, because I talked to him before. He lived in West Hartford afterwards. And that's when I bought that from him, because I knew his wife also. And, you know, I was very friendly with him. A very nice guy. And when she died, he wanted to go to Florida, and he went. And that's when I bought that from him up there. That thing up there is worth a fortune.
I'll just show
And-
everybody what it
oh,
is.
there's another-
I know you're proud. This is something that you did after the war. You got you became very interested in you had a flower shop, got interested in glassware and things like this. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just some of the collectibles that you've had in your life since when you came back, right?
Yes.
Okay. How long were you in those businesses?
I stayed in this flower business about 15 years, and then I was offered, well, from politics, I got this job at the reservoir, and I was in charge of all their outside properties, and I lived in one of their houses, and it's not a shack type house. It was a beautiful place, and reason why I left the flower business and I left the politics, because my little boy Mark, when he was small, he says Nano. They used to call me Nano. He says, you're not home. You come home 12 o'clock at night, and we want to open our presents and stuff. So with his condition, I felt sorry for him, you know. So I had a chance to get this other job. The other politicians gave it to me, and I had it. So, and it was a good job. It paid good and pretty good and everything. So I took that job, and we all moved in to this house. Well, my father-in-law had the job before me, because he was in with the mayor, and the mayor wanted him to take the job, and he passed away. So then that's how I got the job, and I kept it in my pocket. So I went up there and I stayed there 33 years. And my Mark, he almost died there, at that place, and he was the happiest kid. All the three girls, but the two of them, the girl and him, they stuck together, and they used to have their friends up, and he could, like I said, he could ride the mini bike all over the place because I was the boss of the land, you know, and he was friendly. You must have heard about Tommaso, contractors. Well, Angelo and I, we went to school together in that Stanley school next to the college. He bought my Mark a new mini bike and brought it up to gave it to him as a gift, because the one Mark had didn't have no springs on the seats, and they knew his condition, and he bought him a brand new mini bike. And Mark used to, their house was like a half a mile down from the reservoir, and Mark used to go there and eat with them and everything. They were so good to him. But the reservoir was really a life, really a life. I think it was better than the Army, the Air Force, but it was good.
Well, between that and the Air Force, you sound like you had your experience.
I had a good life. Hey, I'm 88 now. I'm gonna be 88 in September, right? And I've been doing pretty good. We traveled a lot. I got to go off on all these subjects because I have a lot of them. If you don't like them, just tell me. I bought a brand new Mercedes, delivered in Germany. This is after the war. When I went up to the reservoir, I had that extra money there. And me and my wife, well, I ordered a car from Plainville, and I ordered what I wanted. I wanted a sunroof, I wanted a color blue, I wanted this, I wanted a certain number on the car. And we went over there and we picked that car up in Germany, in Stuttgart. And well, it was just right out of Stuttgart, the factory. We went to the factory, picked the car up there. It's in a warehouse. And you go there, they assign a mechanic to you. He goes over the car and everything with you. Well, this car, and one of the little windows in the door, it leaked a little bit, so I made them take and do work on it. And they took it back. And we stayed 7 weeks with that Mercedes over there and traveled all of Europe. Then I had to go back to Holland to ship that car back. And that's where I brought it. I brought it there. And
did you ever, if I could interrupt, did you ever go back to any of the places where you served?
I've been to Europe. I've been to Italy 12 times.
Did you serve in Italy?
No.
Okay.
I didn't. I served in, I went back, but it was a very, not to some of the areas where I was, because I didn't want to go to any of the bigger cities, you know what I mean? Well, but I did go, let's see now, no, I didn't go. England, no.
Didn't go back to Liverpool?
No, I never went back to, no.
Or went to any of the places you were stationed,
never,
you were flying?
None of them I was
France?
stationed at. No, I met people from those places, but I never went back to these places. Now, something came to my mind that I wanted to tell you too, as you were talking about.
How about your buddies? Did you stay in touch with any of your buddies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, over here, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like that Bob Shea, Chicago. I used to go there. He was good. He had his own business and everything. He was good. And we used to go back and forth from there. He'd come here, I'd go there. And he had 8 kids, I think. And he has one daughter that's still living in the house where he lived. And they never took her, the family watches for her, but she's a little slow. She calls us all the time. We send her fruit baskets and stuff. We keep that communication.
Well, we certainly want to thank you, Harold. Thank you for your wonderful service
Well,
to this country. That you paid, you know, a pretty hefty price.
I did, but I enjoyed it.